So welcome to our virtual session on VCert's Prepare to Teach Year 1 for the Creative Design and Production. So before we get started, some quick introductions. I'm Beth. For those of you just joined, would you mind just muting yourself at the moment? So that thanks Beth. You can unmute your mic throughout the presentation if you've got questions to ask, but just while we're presenting it so we don't get the background noise. Thank you. And we also have the chat function as well to use. So I'm Beth Hudspeth and I'm from the Provider Development team, and I support schools in particular for the VCert qualification for the onboarding training and CPD. And I'm also joined by Emma Harrington.
Hello everybody, I'm Emma. I'm the subject specialist in craft and design at NCFE. And for those of you who may not have heard of NCFE before, we are an educational charity and awarding organisation that specialises in vocational education. So at post 16, this includes our study programmes, T-levels, and this is our 14 to 16 VCert technical awards. And it's a pleasure to be here with you all today.
Thanks, Emma. So this webinar will provide a brief overview of the VCert Technical Award in Creative Design and Production, and we'll be covering the qualification structure and the assessment. And we will explore curriculum planning and formative assessment, where you'll have the opportunity to look at your pupils' knowledge journey and create a roadmap that will help you have a better understanding of how and when to teach the indicative content, as well as develop some formative assessment activities. We will share a summary of all the resources and support that will be available from NCFE to support you and your pupils before giving you an opportunity to create some teaching and learning activities of your own that can help deliver the content in an active and engaging way. And as a group, we'll also learn from one another and share best practice on what you currently use in your classroom. And lastly, there will be the opportunity to ask any questions that you may have about the qualification. And also, it's just to make you aware that we are aware that the quality assurance team have recently postponed sessions which cover how the Model 5 VCerts are assessed. The rearranged dates for these have not been shared with us yet, but please be aware that we are not part of this training, so we are unable to answer any specific questions around assessment regulations. The rearranged dates will be before the end of the academic year and well before you need information about the assessment in year 2. So this webinar is about prep to teach for year 1, and the year 2 will come before the end of this academic year. So before we begin, we'll start with a starter activity, and I'd like you to do a quick poll on how confident you're currently feeling with the delivery and assessment and the quality assurance of the VCert qualification. So with 1 being no to little confidence and 10 being very confident. So I will just, if you just bear with me while I launch the poll. Bit of screen maneuvering. So how confident do you feel with the VCert qualification? So 1 being not very confident and 9 to 10 being super confident. So we've got some 3 to 4s and some 5 to 6s. So hopefully by the end of this session, we'll get those 3 to 4s and 5 to 6s up to the 7 to 8s and maybe even 9 to 10. So the first activity I'd like you to do is the KWL activity, and this is within your workbook. So the KWL, so what you already know about VCerts, what you'd like to learn about VCerts, and then after the session, what you'll complete the form as part of your reflection and what did you learn. So using your handbook, There's the first two boxes to complete if you haven't done so already. So we'll give you a few minutes to complete that. So what you already know and what you want to learn. And then what we'd like you to do is post in the chat one thing you know already and one thing you'd like to learn. In the chat box function, one thing you'd like to know and one thing you already know, as well as adding to your workbook.
Just waiting for those chats to come through. Oh, great. Helen understands the spec and the requirements of the content. Excellent. That's really good to know. And Beth, like to know what marks equals a pass merit distinction, as we have a mock coming up. Okie dokie, we can address that a little later on. Like to know more about the synoptic projects and how they should be carried out. Yeah, we'll come on to that one shortly as well, Helen. Confident in the subject knowledge, but would like to learn more on the best way to assess learning throughout delivery and how to do the NEA most efficiently. Yeah, of course. I'm sure that's top of everyone's question list as well, actually. Yeah, specification areas, good. Knowledge, subject knowledge, brilliant. Structuring and delivering NEA, yeah. Sounds like very similar thoughts across everybody's chat there. Yeah, likewise. More about synoptic delivery. Yeah.
Yeah, just to make you all aware that the NEA questions won't be answered in this one because this is a prep to teach for year one. We will cover sections of it, but the NEA will be in the year 2 training and the year 2 standardization training for the NEA. This is more year 1 prep to teach, but we will cover sections of it, but not in great detail. Great, thanks everyone. We've just had a question, when will the year 2 training be? The dates are to be released, but they will be by the end of the academic year. So the prep to assess and the year 2 training will be by the end of the academic year, and this one is the prep for year 1. So we'd like to start with a brief overview and the structure of the qualification of the creative design and production technical award qualification.
That'll be me. So here we have the overview of the qualification structure. So I'll just read through that. Obviously, you can see that on screen. Overall, the GLH are 138 hours, which actually includes 120 hours for delivery, and the remainder is broken down 16 hours for NEA, 1 hour 30 for the EA. So the total qualification is 152, which includes your additional homework that you might set or additional independent learning. So as a summary, the NEA has got a 60% weighting and the EA 40% weighting. The content assessed in the EA and NEA will actually be sampled across the full breadth of the qualification. The overall qualification grades for a level 1 are pass, merit, distinction, and for level 2, pass through to a distinction star. Hopefully that is all quite clear.
Thanks, Emma. It just jump slides there.
It's okay. Shall I hand over to you for curriculum planning?
Yep. So next we're going to explore curriculum planning in a bit more detail and what your learner journey is going to look like and why. So when considering curriculum planning, this quote really stands out and is a great reference when considering curriculum design and teaching and learning sequences. The delivery of what you need to teach from the qual spec does not need to be, nor was it the intent for it to be delivered linear. So space practice or distributed practice, which Dylan refers to, means space and retrieval and recall of knowledge out over a period of time, rather than cram practice regularly revisiting prior learned materials. This is an important part of effective planned curriculum, providing opportunity for pupils to forget and relearn, supports the transfer of knowledge to the long-term memory.
So if we look at curriculum planning for a minute, just picking back up on what you're saying there, Beth, this slide has got two models. The first model at the top, blocked study, which is linear content 1, 2, 3, 4. So it could be that your curriculum is delivered in that linear style, 1, 2, 3, 4, for example, or interleaving or weaving, taking your content areas and delivering them again in blocks, but revisiting the blocks as per the diagram. And either one of those can support the delivery of this new model VCERT. So blocked study involves studying a topic before moving on to another. I guess the hitch with that is that the information isn't always being transferred to long-term memory, which needs to be the primary focus for learners. With the new model of VCERT, students no longer complete end of unit assessments. So the ability to retain and recall large pieces of information has become even more important. And the science of learning evidences that the interleaving is the most effective strategy for learners to retain that information. In the chat, could you let us know, it'd be really interesting for us and for others on board, which approach were you planning? So are you planning to deliver, to teach content area one by one, or have you explored to consider interleaving approach? Just whilst people pop their answers in the chat, and I'm sure you're all considering different team meetings and what have you about your curriculum planning and mapping the core content, knowledge and skills effectively. So just really thinking about spacing the project, spacing the content, whether you do the blocked approach or the interleaving approach. It's always a good starting point, as well as obviously blocking in your formative assessment and your summative NEA time.
So we've got
sorry,
yeah,
Beth.
sorry, Emma, you go.
Go for it. We've got a couple of answers here. So considered interleaving, as this is something we have already embedded as a whole school approach. That sounds fabulous. And again, yeah, another one, interleaving in general, whole school. Fab. The way that the VCERT is actually structured is, you know, the particularly artists and research. It's really good practice for students to constantly revisit artists and build upon that knowledge and skill. I think that's actually everybody that's popped a comment in the chat there. So interleaving seems to be the popular one.
Great.
We will come back and cover a little bit more about this shortly, actually. Over back to you then, Beth.
Thank you. So we'll be aware of the qualification content, which is your curriculum, and you'll be planning the order of delivery. But it's also important to remember the whole learner journey, and that includes the knowledge, skills and behaviours that learners need to be successful in their chosen industry area. So we've added some of the areas which might be important to include here too, but this list is not exhaustive and would need to be individualised for each of your learners. So subject-specific knowledge, English, maths and digital skills, work industry skills, communication skills, analytical and evaluative skills, and other problem solving, adaptability, proactively, objectively, professionalism, and so on.
So to summarise for the creative design and production, it's broken down into 6 content areas. And within the specification, which if I can niftily pop that into the chat. Oh no, that's the Jamboard. See, my copy and paste still isn't working. Beth, are you able to?
Yeah, I'll post that in the chat.
It's obviously the heat, it's melting the computer. So the vCert is broken down into 6 content areas, and Beth's just popping the spec into the chat there, so you can see the link if you haven't already got it. With the teaching guidance, it does actually break down each of those areas into suggested activities, or suggested teaching approaches, rather, of how you could approach the delivery of each of those content areas.
That's posted in the chat now.
Excellent, thanks very much.
So here is a visual of the structure of the new vCerts, and this was covered in more depth in part 1 of the Prep to Teach for year 1. So if you were unable to attend, these will be available on our YouTube vCert playlist. But you can see from the points in the year the key dates for the NEA and the EA. So I'll just give a brief overview of the structure, the 2-year structure. So year 1 is very much about covering all the content areas. And then in year 2, the NEA brief is released in September, but it doesn't have to be delivered in September. And our recommendation is January time, but obviously this will have to suit your school and what other mock exams are happening. And as long as the NEA is delivered, assessed and internally verified by the 30th of April, and then the examined assessment will be May due time, and the dates will be released around the GCSE qualification, and then certification will be in July and August. So this session is very much about what you can do in year 1 to deliver those content areas.
Excellent. Thanks, Beth. So just coming back to that interleaving approach. So the interleaving is based upon the idea of the learner journey that embeds knowledge and skills through sequencing the curriculum. So if you the slide that you have in front of you, on the right, it's got the different content areas with the different criteria broken down. If I let you have a look at that, you'll be able to spot some similarities of that can support the interleaving. So this type of synoptic assessment or synoptic approach enables pupils to evidence their capabilities to integrate and apply knowledge, understanding and skills gained with breadth and depth in context. It's therefore essential when we plan for teaching throughout that the delivery that you build in the links across the content so that you can highlight and reinforce that learning. You can also then take a synoptic approach across that quick qualification. We're going to come on to projects which may help as well. So thinking about what types of projects or briefs that you could actually build into these content areas, which would allow multiple opportunities for students to hit the criteria more than once. So just have a little look at those content areas, and what you can do is jot down some ideas about how you could spot some common themes between the content areas, how you could embed the skills, how you could develop and build upon those skills and so on, How can you, I guess, link forward and link back across the content areas? So if you just want a few minutes just to make a few notes about what you're instantly noticing there, that would be great. That's mainly for your reference. We're going to come back and as a group activity shortly, come back and revisit that. So if we can have a look at the overview of the NEA task, that may help as well. So this slide shows a summary of the NEA tasks for creative design and production, including the marks to be awarded for each of those sections. So the key point to note here is that when you're considering the learner journey and sequencing the curriculum, the content areas need to be continually linked to these NEA and tasks. So it's also worth considering how your learner journey also link to the external assessment as well. So you can see the different tasks range from more weighted 3 hours, which equals 12 marks, to a shorter 1 hour, 12 marks. So there's a whole range of timeframes there and different marks, with the highest weighting one, task 4, which is equal to 24 marks. So obviously developing and reviewing a prototype samples would be more time consuming for the students and involve more of a design process and making there as well. So perhaps this would be a good opportunity to look at activity number 1 together.
Thanks, Emma. So let's get our thinking hats on. So for this activity, I'd like you to think about how you would sequence the content and why. So consider if you need to teach a content area in its entirety before moving on, and which areas of the indicative content link. Are there any common themes? Can you link forward and link back? How can you embed the knowledge? And how can you embed the skills? So we're going to open the Jamboard now, and we're going to create a learner journey roadmap or review. You may already have a plan. For those of you already delivering, you share what you've done so far this year. So we're going to post the Jamboard link in the chat, and I'll drag the Jamboard screen over. So we're going to look at the content areas and how we can put them together in a roadmap. So on page 2 of the Jamboard, if those of you haven't used a Jamboard before, there's a sticky note here, and you click on the sticky note and then you can type. So it might be you want to deliver 1 and on its own, then 2, 3, 4. And then you just save. We managed to get the link in, brilliant. So the Jamboard's in the chat, so we'll just give everyone a few minutes to get that open. We've got deliver an introduction to design movements first to provide a sound overview, brilliant. So we introduced one first through a timeline activity that was suggested and has gone up as a classroom wall. Great, brilliant. I hope the timeline activity was successful. Delivered one first building case studies for 1.3 and 1.4, great. Designer talks an insight that run through all throughout the course. Great, thanks everyone. So this Jamboard we'll use throughout the session, but this is live and this is for you to use afterwards as well to, you know, work together, and you can share the content, share each other's practice. We've got after 1, deliver 2, building an investigation, tasks and materials and their properties. Great. Just move the Jamboard out, but it will. So within your workbook, we're just going to pause now here, and it's a good opportunity to take a look at your plan, do, review template. So this is in your workbook. So take a few minutes, moments to consider what you've already done. So those of you already delivering, what you've already done so far, what you plan to do today, and by next week or by September. And that's for activity 1. So it might be that you also want to deliver content area 1 first on its own, or you may like the suggestion of the timeline. So plan, do, review, and we will complete this workbook throughout. I'll just give you a couple of minutes. So what you already have, what you might do after this session today to rethink, or by next week, and then by September. So moving on to activity 2. So for this activity, I'd like you all to think about your teaching and learning activities or tasks that can enable you to teach the content in an active way to your pupils. So using the Jamboard again on page 3, use the sticky notes to record your answers in the different content areas. So some examples for creative design and production are visits to show examples of design in the real world environment, exploring local museums. It could be having visual tactile examples to illustrate a range of materials used in the design production disciplines. Using guest speakers, which I think we had already in the other slide, video footage, educational visits, any particular workshops you deliver. So back on the Jamboard on activity 2, what active teaching do you do for, or have you considered for next year for these content areas? I'll just drag the Jamboard back over. So on slide 3, we've got industry practitioners to set live briefs and involved in a critique stage. Great. Guest speakers and visits for content area 1 and 6.
Skill sticks. Sounds interesting. I
Yeah.
like the sound of that. Skill sticks for each of the material areas to test processes in mini format.
I like the
Sounds
sound of that.
good.
We've got investigation and material testing for 2. Got for the presentation of design solutions, students present design outcomes at the end of the project, as though in industry. Yeah.
I like that showcase event to present design solutions. That's really important. And again, using your local, well, I guess it doesn't actually have to be local because it could be done via Zoom now. Showcasing events involving industry practitioners, your guest speakers, fake live projects with practitioners. Various analysis of various products to understand datorams. Yeah.
We've got studio factory visits So I'm hoping where you all are based, that's a possibility. Because I know getting learners on trips isn't always the easiest.
Though again,
them.
might be able to do a lot of that through contacts, making contacts online, sharing contacts.
Potential work placements. Great, thanks everyone. Just drag the Jamboard out the way. So I hope you found that activity useful and you'll be taking away some great ideas from each other to try out in the classroom. And again, that Jamboard is for you to use after the session to collaborate with each other to share practice. So leading on to our next activity, we're going to share best practice related to resources and what ideas enhance effective practicing and out of your classroom for your pupils. So going back to the Jamboard on page 4, please let us know what resources you currently use or have within your centre. How do you use them? Is an opportunity outside the session to share resources with each other. And a few examples could be you provide learners with planning and production templates, video footage, watching TV shows related to the sources. So I will just pull the Jamboard. So what resources do you currently use? I know when I was teaching fashion textiles, I used to love watching, and as did the learners project. Do you remember Project Runway? We used to love watching Project Runway.
Yeah.
There's some great TV shows actually now, isn't there, with design challenges and
Yeah, it's almost too much, I think, to get very excited about the delivery of the content, and then obviously trying to get everything in rather than focusing on one particular area. But yeah, lots of ideas, and particularly for end of content areas, celebrating and showcasing work. I think everyone's put some really nice ideas together.
just give everyone a few minutes to write on the sticky notes. So resources that you use within your school or outside the school. Do you have a good library with an art section? Or do you have your own books within your classroom that relate to art history and art movements? Well, museum loaned objects to draw, fab.
I think a lot of museums now have got banks of resources which you can loan out, but equally going to the museum and tapping into museum education officers, and they will deliver talks or mini tours for students. Drawing in museums is a particular skill in itself rather than drawing in the classroom. So introducing students to different ways to observe and record and capture information. Thinking about your fashion textiles as well. One of the things that we used to do if we were lucky enough to go to a catwalk show was some pre-training with students how to actually capture in a minute, silhouettes, styling details, shapes in their sketchbook. So very, very quick, like 1 minute sketches and what have you. Anyone got anything else to add on that Jamboard, or should we move on?
It could even be resources you have in the classroom. Like, do you have wood? Do you have fabrics? Do you have materials? Do you have wool? paints. Nowadays school budgets are tight. Not every school has a wide range of resources. I used to always use a lot of recycling, get learners to bring in.
Oh yeah, someone's just read your
Yeah.
mind. There
Great
is
minds think alike.
actually content in the qualification as well about sustainability, recycle, the 6 R's, which don't ask me to recite what they are right now, but recycle, reuse, repurpose. Got 50% of those. So yes, so it's great to look at palette, particularly hard materials, and for students to actually understand the design cycle and the life cycle of materials. Brilliant. Starting to flow now, look. Great.
So clothing pattern templates that students are able to draw around and adapt. Recycled plastic textiles. Yeah, I used to love doing like weaves with carrier bags, but now carrier bags are a shortage because you have to pay for them.
I think it's important for students to understand how what a material is actually made up of. So if it was a plastic carrier bag, are they learning what properties are involved within that particular material? How are they broken down, if they can be broken down through recycling? There's myths of recycling and what have you. And that's what's excellent about this qualification is it allows opportunities for students to learn those things. You can touch upon them and then revisit them, perhaps in a longer brief later on in the course, where students might be a little bit more focused on what discipline they want to specialise in, or understand in greater depth. Going to actually look at a recycling facility is quite an eye-opener. But saying that, thinking of resources, what are they called? Not recycling plants, but quite often cities have got material banks which are accessible for students and schools providers, like cardboard, plastics, fabrics, what have you. So it's thinking about what resources are in the locality rather than always just buying new.
Great, thanks, Emma. We'll move on now to our next activity. So again, we're going to revisit your plan, do, review. So take a few moments to consider what you've already done, what you plan to do today, and what you plan to do next week or by September for activity 2 and 3. So it could be, gather a bank of recycled materials in the classroom to use. So if we just go back to our plan, do, review for activity 2 and 3, so what you already have, what you plan to do by next week and by September. So resources, activities, active teaching. And while you're completing that, we'll talk over the teaching materials that are currently available. So currently for the Research, Creative Design and Production, there are 2 supportive videos for your delivery. This is the first 6 weeks, along with the design order, which interweaves content areas into a design brief format. So as we've been talking before about that interleaving of and following that design brief format. And the resources are currently in development at NCFE, and there will be future free classroom packs, including schemes of work in digital and editable format, containing ready-to-go teaching and learning materials and everything you will need to deliver your visa effectively. There will be workbooks as well, classroom-based activities, and these will be coming in the future. But currently there is some 2 videos for the first 6 weeks and the design order and the design order very much follows the process of the design industry, of the research, the development, the final outcome. So next we're going to take a closer look at assessment, in particular formative assessment for that year 1 of your VCERT delivery. So if we recap back to the quote we shared previously, but explore practice testing and how this links to formative assessment and preparing your learners for the EA and the NEA. So in the context of curriculum planning and design, mapping the core content, knowledge and understanding effectively allows that overlap and naturally holistic links, alongside with carefully considered space practice and well-designed retrieval tasks and testing. It's an excellent formative assessment opportunity for you as a practitioner, whilst also helping prepare your learners for the summative assessment of the core exam papers. So research suggests that practice testing at regular intervals can help prepare students for exams, which reduces anxiety, and they are used to retrieving knowledge on a regular basis. So it's important that there are a variety of methods for formative assessment, which is contextualized and take place on a regular basis. It's also important to have both feedback, focus on the past performance, and feed forward, which is focusing on their development in the future. Formative assessment helps the development of wider skills knowledge, competencies, and confidence, and enhances their employability skills, which then links to the learner journey explored earlier. As well as gaining the knowledge they have developed, your learners are aware of their skills and how to develop those. So to support you in your preparation for the delivery in Year 10, we're going to spend the next part of the session looking at ways that you can use formative assessment. So on the screen now, you can see a range of formative assessment methods. So in the chat, please could you post which ones that you use? So is it discussions, debates? Is there any of the online? The apps? So what do you currently use? Do you have a wide range of activities?
Got quizzes coming through. Yeah. Projects, topic tests, brilliant. Kahoot presentations, questioning, synoptic assessments.
Great.
Does anyone use any of these online interactive apps, just out of interest? We've got Kahoot there. Just wondered if there was anything there that could share as good practice, or anything that has been missed. What was the one the other day? Blookit, if I'm saying it right.
Yep.
That was very popular. Seneca. Is it specific to AQA? Seneca.
I've not heard of Seneca.
No.
Great, thanks for sharing. We've got some more in the chat. We've got GCSE Pod has some good resources that can be used.
Yeah, Google Form. Yeah,
Google Form.
Nice, quick ones. Yeah, yeah. And obviously your standard word searches, true, false, best answer, presentations, and possibly, yeah, GCSE Pod, good resources that could be used or adapted should you need to. Hopefully you won't. You'll receive everything from NCFE. that you need and more.
So moving now on to feedback, a powerful method that can address the majority of the AFL 5 key strategies mentioned earlier is live marking. So live marking puts a greater emphasis on verbal dialogue that is scripted and targeted to help your learners improve their work. This means that pupils can instantly act upon their feedback, all the while significantly reducing written marking for you as a teacher. Live marking permits the teacher to give pupils concise, regular feedback that can be acted on immediately. And I'm aware that some of you may be governed by your marking policy and understand that for Ofsted purpose, progression is not always evident in this situation. But yellow box marking can overcome this issue as it is a more targeted approach to marking that ensures teachers and pupils focus on specific areas of their work rather than the entire piece. That encourages teachers' feedback to be diagnostic and to support improvement. The area of work is clearly marked, focusing on key marking points. A 2020 study found that pupils really valued verbal feedback over written feedback, and it was stated that pupils who received verbal feedback perceived the feedback to be better in terms of quality, use, and quantity of timing and usefulness compared to pupils who received written feedback. So this can come from peer or self-feedback and makes the feedback instant, immediately actionable, and you get formative feedback as well as you see if there are any common errors of the content you need to readdress. And the final idea to consider regarding feedback is that the idea of repeating content and the intervals between teaching and feedback and activities. Linked to the idea of formative assessment, how do you know, more importantly, how do you know your learners that they have retained new knowledge and understand how to retrieve it and the use of how to apply it across the subject area? So we're now going to move on to activity 4 and put some of this theory into practice. So we're going to share with you now a number of formative assessment tasks that could be used and adapted across the qualification, which shows learners' current level of understanding of the content. We'll talk you through each task over the next few slides, and then what we'll do is we'll go back to the Jamboard and we'll have a play around and try all the different formative assessment and consider how you can adapt the tasks.
So one example is a good old favourite, bingo. So this one is walkabout bingo. So you're probably doing this already. So we're just sharing this as an example. You can create your own set of questions which can be populated into the bingo template, which we've shared with you in the workbook. So for example, these questions are all based upon content area 2, design, materials and processes. So you could either populate the questions or you could actually ask the students to populate the questions as well, or instead. So for example, what is the first stage of the design process? The student walks around the classroom or individually or in teams and asking other students for the answer. They put the name on the bingo card and then they move on, and no prizes to guess. A full house shouts bingo. Obviously you can go beyond that and offer prizes or other perks, I guess, of getting the answers correct. So it's just a quick way of getting the students up out of their seat for a start and actually talking to each other. And there's a bit of competitive element in there as well, which students normally love, don't they? So the next slides are some examples of the pro formas that we'll share with you.
Thanks, Emma. So this activity is expand and elaborate. So teachers provide statements from any of the content areas, and you ask your learners to come up with some statements. So this one is examples from the content area 4, presentation of design solutions, and 6, working in the design production industry. Having a but because so allows your pupils to develop the statement in more detail, as well as develop the detail of the complexity of it. It also supports with those long answer questions and gets learners to write more in depth, the but because so. So in the chat, can you add an example of a because for the top turquoise box? A physical portfolio is better to present to the design solution than a digital portfolio. So how would your learners respond? As a because, or you can do a but, or you can do a so. So how would your learners respond to a physical portfolio is better to present the design solution than a digital portfolio? If you could just post in the chat a because, or a but, or a so. So we have, but they can only share it with the people in the room, not globally.
Yeah.
And we've got a because it's more tactile for hands-on learners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both good.
Because it can look better. Many of our pupils like to create work themselves. But mistakes cannot be easily rectified. Yeah, great answers. So this really does help your learners with them long answer questions for the EA and also within the written annotation. So the next activity we have is the thinking and linking grid. So a content area or section of the indicative content is chosen and all the keywords terminology associated with it are placed in a space in the grid. So the example is from content area 1, design and production in context. So what your pupils do is they roll a dice and the number that is rolled identifies the first keyword. And then they roll a second dice and the number identifies a second keyword, and then they put them in the two boxes here. And then what your pupils do is they take the keywords and make a link between the two. So how would the words link? And the links can be verbal or written links, and they can be used at any point in the lesson. So it could be a starter activity, homework activity, and they can help create a revision, whatever you decide. So the last task is a misconception retrieval. So for this example, we've added some common misconceptions using the content area 1, design and production in context, and content area 2, design materials and processes. So your learners will try and provide a correct or better answer, and through their research and attempt to support their answers with evidence. So this is also within the Jamboard. So considering have some better examples or correct. So now that we've gone over all the 4 formative assessment tasks, we're going to go over to the Jamboard and just have a play around with the activities. And we'll do this for about 15 minutes. So we have the walkabout bingo, the content area 3, where you could add Q&As. Content area 5, the bingo. We have an expand and elaborate for content area 4, using the but because so. And for content area 5, we have a thinking and linking grid for content area 3. If you'd like to add any words from the spec. That's the thinking for content area 6, if you'd like to add anything. And then we have the misconception retrieval. So the content area, a misconception and a correct or better answer. If we have 10 to 15 minutes, just having a play around with these formative assessment that could be used in the classroom. And if there's anyone that you'd particularly like to start with, if you want to post in the chat, or if you're just happy to select one. So we've started on the walkabout bingo. We've got some great ones on the walkabout bingo.
Yeah. The bingo is the popular one.
Yeah, it is. We're filling this one up. We'll have to move on to the next one. Might get this one actually filled, and then you can all use it as a bingo with your learners.
Oh, someone's put what is a risk assessment? I quite like the idea of doing a more fun, interactive activity based around health and safety of a particular process or use of materials. So, for example, in the workshop environment, so it would help students to remember certain hazards and then the implications of the hazards. So you could do a whole walkabout bingo based upon health and safety.
Making health and safety fun.
Exactly, yeah.
Especially if there's a prize. I used to always give my
Chocolate.
learners a pen, because they never have pens. Learners
true.
never had pens.
Yeah.
So winning a pen was always a best prize of the week.
We've got one more taker, one more post-it there, bottom right corner. Then we've got full house.
Yeah.
We could do a hypothetical NCFE pen coming your way. Any takers?
Oh, yes, we've got one.
Oh, yes. Excellent.
That we use to move a design. Brilliant. There we've got a full bingo that you can all use together as a resource. So as I've said before, these Jamboards are for you to use collaborative. God, I can't get my words out on the afternoon, on this hot sunny afternoon. You can use this Jamboard together to create resources. We've got some here for the misconception retrieval. Misconception designers should get feedback from one age group. Yeah, designers should make the first thing that comes into their head. Learners always do that, don't they? They want to make the first thing that comes into their head.
Oh, yeah, that's frustrating as a teacher. And again, good to have your guest speakers in to help dispel that myth.
We've got some more adding. We've got a couple more minutes on this, so we can add some more.
Yeah. How many times have we heard that one, the bottom one? I already know what I want to make, so why should I consider anything else?
Yeah. I don't need to do the research or the development. Wait. Right, I'll just move the Jamboard. But like I say, the Jamboard will stay live for you to use. So in the last part of this session, we're going to talk through the support that's available to you in your centres, and we'll detail further information and guidance. So on the NCFE website, within the VCERT page, you'll find information about why to choose VCERTs and the 14 to Schools brochure that contains key information about Key Stage 4 vocational education and how to learn more about our VCERT qualifications. You'll also find the link there to each subject page, and it contains information such as the specification, sample assessment materials and teaching materials. And we've also have our parent support page and the pupil visa information hub. And on both pages, you can also use the get in touch function where you can request more information on subjects. And there is also an opportunity to tick the marketing communications box to receive updates on our qualification events and the new relevant to you via email or phone or through our social media channels.
So for those who were used to using QualHub, we've now integrated QualHub into the NCFE website. So make it much more easier for you guys to actually navigate around the various different pages and tabs, hopefully. Much more streamlined. So looking at the tabs on the slide, you can see the various different sections of where to go to access the qualification, the spec, assessment information, regulations, course documents, support material, and so on. You can also use the tab search our qualifications function by just popping in the subject area or VCERT. So it's quite intuitive. It should pick up those search words and help you get the information you need. The resources are downloadable and you can access those from the website along with your teaching and learning resources and other important information. And again, looking at the portal user guide on the website for further support should you require that. So over the coming months, these pages will be updated. So it's worth periodically looking at them for those important updates.
Thanks, Emma. There's also the VCERT playlist on our, and this is where there'll be the numerous webinars, CPD sessions and training events, which can be accessed on demand. And in this playlist, you can also access on demand the Technical Award Introduction webinar. And once you registered your pupils and you are approved to deliver the qualification, you'll be contacted by the provider development team as part of the onboarding process. So this service is tailored to the individual needs of your centre to ensure your requirements are met. The provider development team, what we do is we support staff to ensure you're prepared to teach the qualification and are clear on the requirements for the delivery and the assessment of the qualification. There's regular CPD sessions throughout the year, especially around those key assessment times to make sure you're on track and feeling confident. And we also offer a range of other support, which you can see on the slide. It's available. So other support that is available includes our wonderful customer support team who can help and support with first line inquiries. So your registration queries, bookings on the portal. You can also email the vcerts at ncfe.org.uk with any questions you have related to the new vcert qualification. So in the last section, there's an opportunity to reflect on what you will take away from today's session, and you can also look at what your next steps and another opportunity to ask questions you still may have. So as we come into the end of the session, this is your opportunity to take a little time to reflect. So there's a few options. You can go back to your plan, do, review in your workbook. You can also complete the L part of your KWL activity, highlighting a few key points that you've learnt during the session. And look back at your W. Did we cover what you wanted to learn? So we'll just take a couple of minutes to go back and to your planned review and your L of what you have learnt. And then what we'll do while you're completing that, we'll go back to the Jamboard. And as a group together, what are your key takeaways? So on the Jamboard, key takeaways, what impact will this have? What will you do next? And how will it impact your learners? We've got confident with knowing there's flexibility of delivering methods, structure in the curriculum. I like the formative assessment tasks. I have used misconception retrieval before. Great. Oh, that's good to know. Start planning projects. Yep. What sort of themes do you have around your projects? If anyone wants to post on the Jamboard themes that they use for projects. We've got to start thinking about guest speakers and visits. That might be useful. I like the formative assessment tasks, understand the structured timeline of delivery. Great. I think it's also making that formative assessment like fun as well for the learners and making it part of the learner journey.
If you can get the students involved in peer assessment and critiques, that's obviously a good skill for progression as well. You know, students to articulate quite clearly their design rationale, for example, or purpose, why they're doing things. I know students often struggle to say that, whether it's verbally or written. So it's all really good practice now. Yeah, that's good. Great. I've got people looking at some of those assessment tools. Good to have a play about with those. Students will know some of those, be familiar with some of those as well, because they may use those particular apps, for example, in different lessons, history and what have you. Slido's good, visual, throwing up the questions and having the student answers come up. They like the sliding scale.
Or even a Jamboard. You could set up a homework Jamboard.
There you go. Yeah. You can also insert images onto Jamboard, so students could upload images of their homework. That's a good starter activity. Photograph your design, your top design, and chuck that in. I think the key thing really is looking at the spec, isn't it, and trying to get some quick wins, your themes, projects, planning those activities, making that engaging. If you've got a static classroom that you use, brilliant, making resources that can actually be in the classroom to support that learning in advance. So getting things printed off for your design walls, keywords, that's always a good one.
We got any sticky notes to how it'll impact your learners? I used to always think the benefit of having guest speakers was always good with my art and design learners. Used to just think, what do you know? Even though you'd worked in the industry, they were like, you're just a teacher. What do you?
Yeah, white noise.
Yeah. What do you? But then if they heard it, from actual industry, that was always had a lot more impact.
Definitely. I think getting them involved in, setting briefs or critiquing student work, so that they hear it from an industry professional. I think that's really, really powerful, and sort of gets the students rallied, doesn't it, really? And gets them used to working and talking about the work quite informally and formally. Yeah,
We've got ideas,
lovely.
exciting delivery, engaging the pupils, increase retention. Yeah, brilliant, great, thanks everyone. And again, this Jamboard is here for you all to use. We'd also appreciate if you could complete a short evaluation to help, us NCFE aware of any future improvements or changes to the service and support we provide. So there's a Microsoft form and there's a QR code, and we'll post the link in the chat. So it could be about future CPD sessions you'd like to have from NCFE. Link to the form, because I know sometimes QR codes don't always, I know on my phone, they don't always want to work. So we're going to now at the end of the session, we're going to go back to our poll and see how confident you feel now with the VCERT delivery. So back to that 1 being no to little confidence and 10 being very confident. So I'll just launch the poll. So hopefully we'll have moved your confidence levels up. I'm just launching that now. So have we got anyone up to the 7 and 8s? How confident you feel about delivery and assessment of the VCERT qualification? Got 100% up at 7 to 8. Great, thanks everyone.
That's fab. Brilliant.
So what we'll do now is we will stop the recording, and if there is any further questions you'd like to ask, you can unmute your mic or you can post in the chat. Or if you think of any questions after the session, you can email providerdevelopment@ncfe.org.uk. And thanks everyone for attending, and we hope you found it useful. And on behalf of everyone at NCFE, we wish you a successful year.
Yeah, can't wait to see student images and student work coming through. That would be fab.